Technology can be amazing, but reality is that quite a number of people are most likely suffering from one form of burnout or the other. My guest today is a leader turned executive coach and leadership expert. She'll be sharing tips on how to stay productive in today's rather interesting world. We have much more lined up for you, but first, enjoy some tech news and updates. This is Tech Trends, and I'm Chukwuemeka Agbata.
As the world we live in is so unpredictable, the ability to learn and to adapt to change is imperative, alongside creativity, problem solving, and communication skills.
Living in a city like Lagos could sometimes be overwhelming as one tries to juggle the realities of workplace and life balance amidst traffic jams and other characteristics of a megacity. But what if one doesn't have to worry about how to run home chores and other mundane things we need to get done on a daily basis? That's a solution this Lagos-based startup is trying to provide.
We have problems every day in Lagos, and a lot of the time we choose to go back home to not worry about these problems. But we go back home to meet more problems, right? You want to fix a thing, you want to eat, you want to do your laundry, you want to clean, and you spend too much time worrying about all these things, right? You have one plug for food, one for laundry, one for your AC, one for plumbing, and even that becomes work in itself. Your escape becomes work in itself. And the question that we ask now is, what happens if all those problems can just disappear and become the problem of just one plug?
In their attempt to redesign the service industry, they provide a tech-enabled service that puts home chores on autopilot. With its solution called Eden, they appoint gardeners to suit the preferences of individuals, giving them a stress-free life.
We focus on 3 services. We focus on a food service that provides meal plans and meal packs to people. We focus on a laundry service, and we have a home cleaning service. And what it does is that by way of our app, once you set up a service, you set up one or you set up all of them, the moment you pay for it and set it up once, you never have to worry about these things again. They just work. You have like a personal assistant, we call them gardeners, within Eden, and their job is to make sure that any questions you have, any problems you have, they answer it for you, making all of this possible at scale with technology, right? So for you, it is all you have to worry about is your app and the schedule you set up on the app, what you want, the specific services that you want to happen on the app. That is where all of it melts together.
The mobile application is easy to navigate, and all one has to do is schedule what needs to be done at a particular time.
You download the app from the App Store and you sign up, right? Basic stuff, ask for your name, your email, your address, your phone number. Basically, it's basically getting all those details so that as we are setting you up and as we are signing you up, right, we are basically setting up your own logistics, your own customer support process. The entire experience and point of the app is to make sure that you're the only person that exists, right? You get your own everything, right? We have a system that makes sure that you can track how things are happening at every stage. So this is my account, right? There's the menu, it says manage services, manage preferences. Maybe like you already have a service, get an extra service. So let's go to manage services, right? So this is, there's a food service, there's a laundry service, and there is like the cleaning service. So let me add a cleaning service, right? I can just go. So this is home cleaning now, right? And all I have to do is ask the question: do I want like my routine light cleaning of the house, the normal sweeping, or do I want a deep cleaning? Deep cleaning here is basically saying that like I want it scrubbed, like I'm moving in, right? Yeah, I'll go for light cleaning. So it's a flat. How many bedrooms? It asks me how many bedrooms. I say okay, 3 beds. He asks me how many living rooms. 1 living room, right? Asks me number of restrooms. I'd say 3, right? Then there's a kitchen, 1 kitchen. Of course, it's just I have no study. Maybe I have like a balcony, right? And then it now asks me again that how frequently do I want this cleaning to happen? Do I want it to happen once a week, every 2 weeks, once a month? What day of the week will I want my house to be cleaned? Do I want it cleaned on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? Any day I like, or Saturday. And yeah, all I have to do is hit save and we're good to go.
With its operational model for delivering services, the startup helps individuals increase their productivity by taking off the worries of their welfare workload.
So, these are the steps we take to build a website.
This is not your typical classroom. 3 times a week, these students gather in their teacher's garden in Uganda's capital, Kampala, to learn how to code.
You write the title, you write your heading.
Just before lockdown forced schools to shut down in the East African nation, Shamim Mwanaisha, a mother of 2, started the Supersonic Aviators Club. Her aim is to train the next generation of Ugandan coders. Mwanaisha used her own savings to start the club, which mainly caters to underprivileged children who do not have access to equipment and internet. The classes are free of charge, and here, children as young as 6 can learn the fundamentals of coding.
The system works in the way that we recruit children and we introduce them to STEM education using coding, space, aviation, and climate change. In coding, we learn different languages. For example, we learn HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. I also teach them to use codes so that they be able to command the computer to do different tasks.
Mwanaisha was inspired to take up coding 3 years ago when her 7-year-old son expressed interest in aviation and coding. Despite the challenges of ongoing lockdowns and restrictions due to the pandemic, Mwanaisha finds ways to keep the classes going and the children engaged and active, especially when schools are closed.
Before COVID, I used to host many children into my house. They would come, they would study. But right now, because of we have to follow the SOPs, children have to learn from outside my compound, whereby we face a problem of sunshine. It's too hot outside. Sometimes when you're learning, it rains. And other parents, they don't have money to buy internet. So few of them go online.
The club has slowly garnered attention, mainly through word of mouth, and currently has around 25 children from the age of 6 to the late teens.
I do coding because I want to be a white hat hacker and be able to stop or block the black hat hackers.
So can you go through this? Can you tell me what you've done, starting from doc?
Africa is the world's last major untapped market for internet access. Only 16% of its billion people use the internet, according to the International Telecommunication Union. Analysts say technological innovation is seen as a quick way to help promote lasting economic growth and development. Along with coding, the initiative also helps children develop their interests in aviation, astronomy, and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Mwanaisha has also enlisted the services of her friend, engineer and inventor Innocent Mugabi, who happened to have recently built his own aircraft.
And then we have this.
He helps the students learn about aircraft parts and aviation vocabulary. They also regularly watch documentaries about aviation and space exploration.
A specific standard which is hard.
We do flight experiences. We do camp aviation. We assemble aircrafts. They watch movies about space to motivate them. They took presentations. This has enabled them to be creative, critical thinkers, and also problem solvers.
With my passion in aviation and climate change, I hope that one day I'll be able to discover biofuels which planes can use instead of fossil fuels which damage the environment.
Shamim Mwanaisha has also taken the club's activities online, with classes offered to anyone interested in coding. Mwanaisha also says she is looking for donors to help buy more laptops and equipment for her aviation and space programs.
This is the lunar moon. This is an astronaut on the lunar moon trying to get samples of lunar rocks.
This Egyptian mechatronics engineer can turn air into water droplets thanks to ELU, a robot he devised to utilize humidity and turn it into water using artificial intelligence. The 28-year-old engineer was inspired by NASA's mission to Mars and has built his robot to function in weather conditions similar to the Red Planet, known to have high levels of humidity but very dry. Thanks to the robot's settings,
IML, a robot dedicated to exploring moisture on Mars and converting it into drinkable water, which gives new hope to life on Mars and other planets.
Mahmoud El-Koumi proposes that ELU can absorb moisture on Mars and turn it into drinkable water.
The new low-cost technology, supported by artificial intelligence, can generate big amounts of water with less energy using polymers. Other technologies used to generate water from air, including mechanical heat exchangers, are more expensive and energy-consuming.
It took El-Koumi 9 months to reach ELU's final design and says it costs nearly $250. The cost of generating 1 litre of water via ELU only ranges between 1.5 to 2 cents in comparison to 20 cents using other technologies, according to the young researcher.
The process of generating water from air goes through different stages. The first one is the filtration, where air is filtered well, then condensation, then one more filtration stage, then a sterilization stage using ultraviolet. Then the mineral salts beneficial to humans' health are added. I can launch plants that can generate more than 5,000 liters per day or even 50,000 liters. I can scale it up without any problems. I can also use it not only on Mars, but in any desert area that has no access to natural water resources like rivers, wells. Digging wells is so expensive, and so is the cost of river extension. The cost of generating water from air is relatively lower than other available technologies.
El-Koumi wishes that his self-financed project can be used on larger scales, not only on Mars, but in other arid areas with little or no access to water resources.
Aqua, glad to have you on the show today.
Really excited to be here at CFA. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Awesome. Let's start by getting your view on how you think COVID-19 has changed technology and startups in Africa.
Yeah, really great sort of question. From my perspective, I think that COVID has had a really interesting impact in that it showed us what has worked and what maybe isn't working as well. I had the privilege of working actually on a consulting project where we were focused on looking at tech-enabled businesses, especially delivery-based businesses, to really see the impact that COVID had. And so when you're looking at some of the e-commerce sites or some of the sites that are a little bit more focused on delivering goods and providing goods in that way, I think that it actually was quite a positive, I guess you can say, a bit of a pro for those types of businesses that actually had, a system that worked online, some level of logistics that also worked. But I think the key here was making sure whether or not they knew they had inventory. So those businesses that didn't maybe have complete control over their inventory, it was probably a lot harder for them to get in touch with merchants and get in touch with vendors, because a lot of vendors and merchants weren't necessarily opening. So I think in some ways, it really highlighted how businesses who were really solving a real problem around delivery and logistics were able to really capitalize that and use that moving forward. Businesses maybe that hadn't figured it out as well, maybe things didn't necessarily work out as well for them. And then of course, businesses that were a bit more brick and mortar, it was a little bit harder for them as well. So I think COVID really just highlighted a lot of really interesting issues. And when we are thinking about, especially tech and tech-enabled businesses on the continent, a lot of it has to be, what's the right way to put it? We also have to think about behavior change, right? So using a lot of these apps, using a lot of these online platforms is a new thing. So your behavior has to change, or something has to change your behavior. And so COVID definitely changed some people's behavior. It forced people who were willing to maybe jump into their car to go to a pharmacy or to order ahead and maybe go and pick up, to really think about delivery and using delivery, I think, a lot more. So in that way, I think businesses or startups that were looking at that particular sector did really well.
Interesting. Let's sort of understand how your journey into the world of tech began. Take us through that.
Yeah, so it honestly was complete random happenchance. I never thought I would work in tech. I actually never really thought I'd work in leadership or management. Even what I do full time right now was never something I ever envisioned or dreamed. I was honestly randomly recruited by someone who was recruiting for this, not just Pan-African, I mean, a worldwide company that pretty much puts out these clones of websites. And I thought he was crazy, but I couldn't find another opportunity at the time. So I had moved back to Accra, Ghana at this point. So this is 2012. And so I met this recruiter. I thought he was crazy, but it was the best opportunity that came my way. And so I took it. And so that was really the opportunity that gave me, I guess, a lot of exposure to the online business space and how manual actually the online business space really was. So my first real job was, launching and running a real estate classifieds business in Accra, Ghana. And I honestly had no business doing that. My background actually is in land use and environmental planning, which is not real estate, but the recruiter thought it was close enough. I think he really liked sort of my energy and thought that I'd be a pretty good salesperson. I am a pretty good salesperson, but probably not in a market where being humble and being quiet is a little bit more of the norm. So I'm a bit on the excited side doing sales and marketing in Ghana and Accra specifically. But I mean, ultimately, it was a really interesting opportunity. And for me, one of the things I've learned about myself is that I love a challenge. And I thought it was a challenge.
You probably answered my next question, but let me still ask it. So what would you have done differently if you were in a tech company today?
That's a really interesting question. And to be honest, I don't think there's much I could have done differently. I think that one of the reasons why I was able to, not always, I would say willingly, but one of the reasons why I think I was able to influence and sometimes maybe drag people along was simply because I was so naive. I hadn't really worked within a structured environment prior to that. So my experience prior to that was working for USAID projects. So to the development space, which is very different from working within the tech-enabled space or even more corporate space. So I was, completely green. I was very naive. And so I was just doing what I thought was best and based on what I could sort of glean from the situation. And I think it's because of that, I really focused on trying to build rapport with my team. I really focused on, what worked for me as opposed to trying to fit myself into boxes or to do things that didn't really resonate. So for example, even though anyone looking at my name is obviously incredibly Ghanaian, I don't sound necessarily very Ghanaian. My approach to many things people would say is probably not stereotypically Ghanaian. And I realized that very early on that I actually put people off, I annoyed people, and that I wasn't necessarily the best person to do all the sales or the best person to do all the, customer service. So I quickly made sure that I brought people onto my team that 1, spoke different local languages, 2, maybe spoke at a pace that was very different from me. And then of course, 3, probably had a better understanding of the market than I did.
All right, Akwa, we're running out of time, and I have a couple of more questions to ask you. First of all, I can imagine that you are very conscious about your productivity, and a lot of employers today, complain that, even with all the technology, people are becoming less productive, right? What's your take on how people can be more productive with all the tools available today?
Being in an office for 8 hours a day doesn't equate 8 hours of productive work or 8 hours of work that's going to positively impact your bottom line.
Very quickly, even though we're focused on, startup founders, tech startups, I just want to get your take quickly on social media pressure and its effect on especially young people today. What's the way forward?
Yeah, and I think social media pressures also, I think, impact founders, CEOs as well. And I think, there's one end where being able to access people in this way, I think is amazing, right? You can kind of ask anyone for advice or be mentored kind of by anyone and really see what other people are up to. But I think a key thing for us also to recognize is that social media is incredibly curated. We're not showing people everything. And so we're only seeing typically the best parts of it or what people want us to see. And I think it's also really important that even a lot of CEOs and founders, even in the tech space, and I think this is across the world, are also leveraging that, right, to show a certain face, to show themselves in a certain light, because it might help them with getting additional funding. It might support their business in other ways and even allow them, right, to get recognition in media, all those things. So, I think social media is being used in a really unique way. I think that for the most part, it can be positive, but really just recognizing that you shouldn't try to compare yourself to what someone else is doing. That's the first thing. And then also really recognizing that a lot of what you're seeing really has a specific intention. And that intention is usually to help push the bottom line of whatever business, especially these founders or CEOs have. So there typically is a lot of thought that goes into a lot of what's being shared. And I'm sure a lot of people will be like, no, there's not much thought. Also recognizing that a lot of our decision-making is subconscious. So even if we're not necessarily aware of it, there probably is an intention there, but maybe we have to just spend some time and a little bit of energy reflecting on it and really trying to see how we're coming across and maybe what we're communicating to the world.
Amazing, Akua. Finally, we're out of time. What are some of the tools you can recommend that you use out there that startup founders, executives can make use of as well?
So the first thing I would say is really take some time to know yourself and recognize that you're going to evolve. Where you were 5 years ago, even where you were a year ago, is not going to be the same to where you are now. So taking a bit of time and a bit of space to really reflect on what success could look like for you, I think can be incredibly helpful. I have a ton of resources on my website. I have a blog, there's just so much stuff, I've put out there. And I think that you can just Google. And I think this one resource, and I mentioned it on a recent podcast, but looking at something like a Wheel of Life, so you can Google it, I think can be incredibly helpful and help you really see that maybe a year ago you really wanted to focus on your business, but there's something else that maybe is more important to you right now. So just taking the time to reflect on where you are, rate those different pieces will really help you think about, what do I need to do as a human being so I can show up as a leader?
Akua, thank you so much for being on the show today. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've been chatting with Akua Nyame-Mensah, founder A&M & Company. Startup founders and indeed all users of technology have to be in control. The long and short is that you should be in control and not the other way around. Ensure that you consciously leverage technology to improve your productivity and strive to keep it that way. That's it for our show for today. You can watch these and previous editions of the show on Channels TV, YouTube, or cfablog.ng. For Tech Trends, I'm Chukwemeka Agbata.